explores the close relationship between Kushner, the Trump administration, and the Crown Prince that helped shape the deal.
Kushner being able to exploit his access to the president, his power within the Trump administration.
Is there a role for DOJ or Congress or any entity to look into this, to scrub this?
I think there's a question that the Department of Justice should take a really hard look.
I don't know what the administration's waiting for in terms of accountability.
I believe that there's a report that they're working on. They've been doing an investigation, and when they have the facts of the investigation, then it'll be up to the president to make a determination on what he wants to do.
So Jared Kushner leaves the White House and boom, a $2 billion investment drops into his lap from Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince. Sounds lucky, right? Except here's the juicy bit. Even the Saudi fund's own advisors basically said, this deal stinks, pointing out Jared has zero private equity experience. And then MBS just waves it through like it's buying coffee. Was this about business smarts? Or the $110 billion arms deal Kushner helped broker while he was in office? Let's just say the timing will make your jaw hit the floor.
A $2 billion investment that former President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, secured last summer from a fund led by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The New York Times reported some of the group's concerns. The private equity firm was found to be, quote, unsatisfactory in all aspects. Kushner's private equity firm secured the investment after Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman overruled a host of objections from the sovereign wealth fund's advisors.
Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Imagine you finish your last day at work, hand in your pass, maybe grab a cupcake from the break room, and then open your bank app to see someone just drop $2 billion into your account. Not a bonus, not lottery winnings, but a thanks for everything payout from one of the richest and most powerful people on earth. That's basically what happened to Jared Kushner after he left the White House. Except in his case, the someone was Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, better known as MBS, and the thank you note came in the form of an investment from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund into Kushner's brand new private equity firm.
Jared Kushner appears to have cashed in on his time in the White House with a $2 billion investment from none other than Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
The kingdom would be taking on the bulk of the investment and the risk. There was a seemingly excessive asset management fee and public relations risks due to Kushner's involvement.
That could be deemed to be not only against American values, but against American national security. But MBS was not Crown Prince when Trump came into office.
Unanimously, the United States Senate has said that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is responsible for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Now, there's nothing unusual about a former official going into business. DC is practically built on that revolving door. But the timing and the scale of this one are what make people's eyebrows shoot up. The money hit not long after Kushner had spent years working side by side with MBS on sensitive political matters while his father-in-law was president. Sensitive here meaning billions in arms sales, intelligence sharing, and political cover at moments when the Saudi prince was under intense international criticism. It's like giving your Uber driver a mansion just for getting you home without hitting a red light. Over the top and not exactly normal procedure. Here's where it gets even stranger. The Saudi fund has a team of financial pros whose entire job is to make sure their investments aren't garbage. Those experts looked at Kushner's firm, saw it had zero track record. Literally, the ink on its website was probably still drying, and advised against handing him even a fraction of that $2 billion. In the business world, this is like asking someone if they know how to put together IKEA furniture, hearing them say, I've never even held an Allen wrench, and then giving them a whole warehouse to assemble. Not smart, yet MBS personally overruled his own advisors, not just politely ignored them, he signed off himself. That's not common. Someone at that level doesn't usually micromanage small investment decisions, let alone greenlight deals that his billion-dollar experts have already red flagged. The obvious question is why? What was so special about Kushner that it was worth bending all the normal rules? Because this wasn't like investing in an oil field or a tech giant. It was betting billions on a political insider who had only just left government and had no history of running a fund. If this were about business genius, there'd be some evidence of miraculous returns or a track record of turning struggling companies into blockbusters.
Say it's not because of his track record in private equity, because he doesn't have one. What I reported in my Substack newsletter this week, Vicky Ward Investigates, from where he went on to do a lot of things, including the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the roundup at the Ritz-Carlton, the blockade of Qatar, where the United States has our airbase. Evidence in legal papers that Jared Kushner and MBS were discussing the fact that there was a problem around MBS succeeding in Saudi Arabia because the US intelligence agency backed his cousin.
I mean, Trump talked about draining the swamp, and we have a swamp monster in this story.
But Kushner brought none of that to the table, unless you count his ability to get phone calls returned in Riyadh faster than a Wall Street rainmaker. That's why the whole thing has that political thank you card energy. This wasn't about who could handle the money best. It was about who had handled certain political situations in a way that benefited the Crown Prince the most. And once you look at it through that lens, you start to wonder exactly which past moments MBS might be repaying here. Was it a specific deal, a behind-the-scenes favor, or was it more of a running tab for years of mutually useful cooperation? Either way, calling it a coincidence would be like calling a fire hydrant in the desert an accident. It's technically possible, but no one's really buying it. So if this $2 billion was the thank you, what exactly was the you? That answer takes us straight into the arms deals that kept the relationship and the money flowing. So here's the picture. A massive arms sale that made the Saudi military stronger, gave MBS big bragging rights at home, and helped keep Washington on his side. Then, not long after Kushner left office, MBS personally blesses a $2 billion investment into Kushner's completely untested private equity fund. The line from point A to point B is so straight you could play shuffleboard on it. Think of it like playing Monopoly. On your turn as a US official, you hand another player Boardwalk, Park Place, the railroads, and a hotel for free. You smile, the other player smiles, then you step out of the game entirely, open a side door, and that same player quietly hands you stacks of Monopoly cash off the board, while everyone else pretends not to see it. Senator Chris Murphy has publicly warned about how foreign influence can creep into US politics through exactly this kind of arrangement. It's not illegal for a private citizen to take foreign investment, but when the investor is a head of state you worked with on national security and arms sales, there's a flashing neon question mark over it. Was this simply gratitude? Was it a calculated move to keep Kushner in their corner for future policy fights? Or was it both at the same time? There's also the matter of timing. The arms deal was announced in 2017. By early 2021, Kushner was officially in private life. That's a short window for the biggest political customer you ever had to turn into your biggest business backer. If this were purely a coincidence, it's a very lucky one for Jared. If it wasn't, then we're basically talking about a delayed payment for services rendered, just processed through the polite world of investments instead of wire transfers labeled thank you.
Mohammed bin Nayef, who has since been disappeared, who is an American hero, who was given a medal by the CIA for saving American lives, is that there are questions about Jared Kushner's role right at the beginning of the Trump administration in actually helping Mohammed bin Salman get his job as Crown Prince. That could be deemed to be not only against American values, but against American national security. But MBS was not Crown Prince when Trump came into office and now disappeared. That could be a very big reason why Mohammed bin Salman might want to pay Jared Kushner $2 billion.
And remember, MBS didn't delegate the decision. His own financial experts advised against the deal, citing concerns about risk and Kushner's lack of experience. For a prince who oversees hundreds of billions in investments, personally stepping in to waive a deal through looks less like portfolio management and more like personal business. The big takeaway is that this arms sale could have been the setup play in a much longer game, a game where the rewards don't come in policy wins or public credit, but in private windfalls funded by a foreign leader who just happens to owe you a favor. And it would be one thing if this was the only time we saw a pattern like this in Kushner's post-White House life. But funny enough, it's not. Because once you look at where else his money comes from, you start seeing other familiar names and flags on the map. And that takes us into the part of the story where property deals start looking an awful lot like political IOUs. What happens when your investor list is 99% foreign cash? Your business plan starts to look less like an investment strategy and and more like a political map of the world. That's exactly the situation with Jared Kushner's firm, Affinity Partners. The heavy hitters on his funding roster aren't local pension funds or Silicon Valley billionaires. They're sovereign wealth funds from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and a few other countries whose leaders Kushner just happened to do official business with back when he worked in the White House. It's not just that these investors are foreign. Plenty of international money moves through major private equity in New York. It's about where the money is coming from and the timing. Leaders Kushner once courted in diplomatic meetings are now essentially business partners. Meetings that used to be about strategic partnerships for US policy are now about building luxury towers and billion-dollar hospitality projects. That's a shift that feels less like career evolution and more like cashing in on your old contact list. You can actually trace the path. He leaves the White House, starts his fund, magically gets billions from countries where he spent years building personal ties while shaping US policy. Then the deals start popping up in those same regions or with those same governments. It's not subtle. Take Serbia, for example. Affinity Partners is part of a massive $500 million redevelopment project in Belgrade, turning a historic waterfront site into gleaming offices, condos, and upscale stores. Sounds fine, until you find out the land used to be a wartime defense site bombed during the 1999 conflict. For many locals, it's a symbolic piece of history that still holds memories of NATO airstrikes and the breakup of Yugoslavia. This isn't just another plot in the city, it's a place with deep, raw emotions attached to it. When the plan hit the news, it wasn't all polite ribbon-cutting events. Thousands of Serbians signed petitions demanding the project be halted.
Kushner being able to exploit his access to the president, his power within the Trump administration.
The kingdom would be taking on the bulk of the investment and the risk. There was a seemingly excessive asset management fee and public relations risks due to Kushner's involvement.
Evidence in legal papers that Jared Kushner and MBS were discussing the fact that there was a problem around MBS succeeding in Saudi Arabia because the US intelligence agency backed his cousin and now disappeared. That could be a very big reason why Mohammed bin Salman might want to pay Jared Kushner $2 billion.
Cue the mental image. Jared Kushner, hard hat on, walking through a Serbian construction site saying, "Guys, I know this used to be rubble from an air raid, but hear me out. Rooftop cocktail bar." If it feels tone deaf, that's because it is. Then there's the political overlap. In Serbia and elsewhere, he's not just working with random local developers. Some of the people and officials involved in his projects are the same ones he interacted with while handling diplomatic matters for the United States. In business, that's called leveraging your network. In politics, it raises a whole set of questions about whether the network was built for the public's benefit or your future business deals. It's easy for defenders to say, well, he's a private citizen now. He can work with whoever he wants. That's true, but these aren't just business relationships formed from scratch. These are political connections that were forged in the name of representing the United States, later repurposed for private wealth creation. And when nearly all the starting capital for your firm comes from foreign states with strategic interests, it's hard to believe there's zero influence being traded alongside the money. This is where the pattern starts to speak louder than the individual deals. First the Saudi investment, then overlapping projects in politically connected countries, then more foreign-funded ventures in places tied to his past government work. It's not one lucky score, it's a string of them, stitched together by the same thread: access to foreign power and willingness to turn that into personal profit. We're not talking about Kushner opening a franchise of burger joints in New Jersey. We're talking about luxury developments in geopolitically sensitive spots, financed by governments that see him as more than just another private investor. And in every case, the line between smart business and monetizing old political relationships stays so thin you'd need a microscope to see daylight between them. The bigger problem, there's no real guardrail to stop this. Once you leave public office, the expectation is you handle yourself ethically, but there isn't a set of hard rules to keep ex-officials from flipping global political relationships into giant foreign-backed paydays. And if those guardrails aren't there now, you can bet this won't be the last time someone walks straight from diplomacy into a billion-dollar handshake. Kushner's story shows just how easy it is to turn a public job into a private jackpot, especially when your friends are foreign governments with endless cash. If this keeps happening, future White House exits might come with what's basically a foreign friends bonus package, neatly disguised as business deals. The weirdest part? Neither Democrats nor Republicans seem in a hurry to close these loopholes. Maybe because too many of them are already planning their own post office payday. If we don't ask why this is allowed, we might as well start printing "thank you for your service" checks in multiple currencies.